feels like if I'm going to have a channel that's going to go down, I don't want it to be my bread and butter astrology channel. You know what I'm saying? Okay, why don't we get into this? Let me press go on this interview, and I'm actually going to publish right now. I'm hitting publish. Couldn't save changes. Review your video details. What is this now? Oh, invalid request. Authentication expired. Let's see. I got to reload this. I'm going to have. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play this video right now, or I'm going to play this interview here over on Spreaker. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to reload the video over on YouTube. It's been real fun dealing with technology the last couple of days. All right, here's me and Robert Bonomo from yesterday. Enjoy the audio portion. I'll go over to YouTube and try to upload it again. And you can go over there and see the actual visual. And I'll be back in a little over an hour. And we'll wrap things up for this Friday.
All right, so on today's Friday FARcast, it literally is a FARcast because I'm recording this segment with my good buddy Robert Bonomo halfway around the world. So it's not quite as far as we can get, but it's pretty damn far. What's going on, Robert?
How you doing, man? I'm doing really well.
Doing fantastic here. So it's been a few years since I had you on the show.
Yeah.
I think the last time I had you on with Patrick, the money guy. And
right, I was in Vietnam, I remember.
So the three of us, we were talking, I don't know what we were talking about, but it was a pretty good conversation. And it was like, the only thing that was missing was the three of us and like a bottle of scotch. I mean, that's what it felt like. So, but it's been too long, and wanted to get you back on here. But not that I've been waiting to have you back on the program, but we have something to talk about. That's your new excellent video over on YouTube called The 21 Faces of God, which is a really comprehensive and archetypal and mythopoetic look at the major arcana in Tarot. So first of all, congratulations on that. You're getting a lot of accolades, and they're really well received. And I just wanted to jump in and see where you got the inspiration from and maybe walk people through that process a little bit.
Yeah, so when my last novel, Your Love Incomplete, this was about 10 years ago when I wrote it. I used the major arcana as the narrative arc. So I really got into my entry into the major arcana was the path. And I think a lot of people look at it as card by card, but they don't look too much at the path. And I wrote a whole novel on that narrative arc. And I started to look around, and there was really nothing that I could see. There are some works that go through the path, but in film, there was nothing. So no one had made a film. And remember, this film is not about divination. It's about the cards themselves. And I felt like the cards had given me so much. They really have. Getting into the cards got me into astrology. It was through the cards.
Sure.
Those later books of Jung on alchemy, Aeon, the Mysterium, through the cards, I finally understood those books. Those books are not easy books to read. But I remember it all just began to click. And thanks to the cards. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to create a film, and I love film, classic film. I love classic film. I like classical music a lot. So I wanted to there are a lot of cookbooks on the tarot, but there are not a lot of books that give you the feeling of a card. And Rob, that's I'm so happy we can have this conversation because you're a tarot reader. You know, I remember you've talked about, you spent years reading cards. No?
Absolutely.
You still do, but you've done for many years. And when you learn the cards, it's a little bit like playing music, you know, hitting the notes. But when you feel the cards, that's when all the inspiration comes through. Mm-hmm. And as a tarot reader, sometimes I think I get more than the querent because I get that inspiration. I see it. Mm-hmm. I did 2 readings today. I was shocked. And, you know, the querents were like, well, yeah, I mean, I could see they were getting it, but I saw it all. It was so clear. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing the cards gave. So I wanted to try and transmit to people that feeling you get, especially I only did the major arcana, no, but that you can get with the cards, because these archetypes are very, very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you use the major arcana for the arc of a novel, because I feel like when you really get into the heart and the meat and the sizzle of a tarot reading, you're telling a story, right? I mean, this is what it's about. It's not like, well, there's this card here and there's this card. I mean, you see the whole thing as a tapestry, and then you're able to relate a story to that person. And I mean, I think that's when it gets really, really good. That's when it gets sexy, and you know that you're in some kind of deeper, more meaningful flow. And that's great, man. So you've got a lot of really good feedback from a lot of the folks that have been watching. Yep. How long did it take you from start to finish to complete the whole thing?
I spent I would say I spent at least a year. So I set up files for each one of the parts of the film. There are 27 parts, so 5 introductory parts, and then I go through each of the 22 parts. About a year looking for images, films, clips, and then 2 years making it. So well north of 2 years.
Yeah.
And about every day. It was about 2 or 3 hours every day, with the occasional 10 hours just like go crazy.
Right. So that was a real act of endurance. Which of the major arcana would you ascribe? Would you ascribe this journey to? Maybe it's a number of them, but that act of endurance, what would you ascribe that to?
That's a really good question. I would say the Emperor, because you got to have stones to work on something for 3 years that you're not going to get a nickel from. Because I understood this. I used copyrighted material. And I knew this was, I mean, I'm not arguing with it, but on YouTube gives you the opportunity to use copyright material. The copyright holders can monetize it. I accepted that. But this was a labor of love. And in the end, it's that fight, no? Because more than once I was completely knocked out. I remember on The Fool, I got so stuck on The Fool. And I'm like, if I'm stuck here, took me a couple months to get through The Fool. But when did
you do sequentially? Did you start with The Fool?
Interestingly, the first card I did, so the first 5 I did, the first card I did was the Tower.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
And it was interesting, too. And it came as an inspiration. I used the Tower. There's no voiceover in the Tower. It's those scenes from Fight Club. And then it goes through the war in Iraq scenes. And then you see Building 7 collapse. And then you see Liberty Tower rise at the end. It's the alchemy. Because for me, the one key, if there's one way to describe the path of the major arcana, it's alchemy. It's alchemy. And in the film, I go back and try and show those initial alchemy images from like the 13th and 14th century, how similar they are to the Visconti Sforza deck. And I show a lot of comparisons. No? And that sense of alchemy is the key, I think. More than astrology, it's alchemy in the cards.
Interesting. So have you ever seen The Game with Michael Douglas?
Right.
To me, The Game is the ultimate sort of personification of the Tower, right? As a film. I mean,
and the two of them, right?
Well,
the brother, right?
There's the brother, but I mean, if you follow the arc of the film, Michael Douglas is a real arrogant prick, and Sean Penn is his little brother, and he gives him this present for his birthday, and he basically signs him up with this group that will destroy him and will destroy his life, right? Because this guy has everything, he's done everything, but what he hasn't experienced the utter and complete collapse of everything all at once. And this is what happens with people with money. They insulate themselves. And so there's this group that comes in, which is very interesting because this group can manipulate reality, right? They can go in and do anything they want, because he signed off on all these permissions. So at the end of the film, I'll do the spoiler here. At the end of the film, he winds up in Mexico with nothing. Oh, do you remember that scene?
Yes.
He loses everything.
That's not a long time ago.
He loses everything. It's a brilliant movie. He loses everything. So he has to come back just like, you know, one of the immigrants, and cross the border, get back to the States. And when he does, he kind of goes wacko and decides he's going to take things into his own hands. And this is where the whole kind of experience goes sideways. And they have to do a lot of like kind of course corrects in time, so that they have this outcome that they want, right? And the outcome is him falling off that tower, jumping off that tower. Do you remember that scene? And he falls through this pane of glass, and there's this massive cushion at the bottom where he pops up, and everybody's there, and they're blowing their, you know, little party horns, and there's champagne, and he's like, "What the fuck?" Right? But in that moment, he finishes his path as the man who leaps off the tower, and he loses everything, which is the tower, right? Everything crumbles. And then he winds up becoming kind of reborn again and finds his power again in a different kind of way. It's one of the best movies that's really representative of one of the major arcana. And there are other movies out there, but I think that's probably the best in terms of personification.
All right. And I focused a lot on from a few clips was Fight Club too, because I love that scene at the end of Fight Club, which I use, where the last scene you see the two towers collapse. Remember, that film was made in 1997.
Right. That, and of course, it's in the book as well. Don't you think the Fight Club is like the Lovers and the Devil card? You know?
Oh. Yeah.
You know,
in a sense, and the two people falling out of the tower.
That's right. It is the Lovers and the Devil card, because they have this weird attraction to each other. Nobody's seen Fight Club. I'm not going to spoil Fight Club. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Yeah.
But
let's not spoil that one. Yeah.
No, but they go from being the lovers to this devilish kind of attraction, which is using these seething energies, right, to do something that's very, very destructive at the end of the film.
And remember, Ouspensky wrote a great little book on the tarot. You can find it on the internet. I can't remember the name of it. It's free. And what he does is he puts the cards against their opposites. Yeah. If you put the Lovers next to the Devil, it's the same card.
It's the same card.
But you're way along on the path.
Yeah,
so what was so beautiful in the Lovers, in the Devil,
right? You become chained. You become chained by ego, desire, jealousy. Not eroticism, but sex without heart. I mean, all those things, right?
I think one great example of the Devil is the guru who can't stop screwing his followers. You know, because that last set of cards, that last line of cards, that's the spiritual level. And the Devil guards that path. You've got to pass through him. And what's interesting is if you follow from death, you go to the night. Mm-hmm. All the cards after death are the night. Yeah. The Devil, the Tower, the Star, the Moon, and then you're born again in the sun. But you are in the depths of hell when you are between the Devil and the Tower. That's right.
I mean, that channel in the major arcana it's a major channel. A lot of people don't get past that channel, man.
And that's why, when you look at the Hangman, the Hangman's that moment when you begin to wake up. Then what happens? You die.
Yeah.
Then temperate. And what happens is when you die to your old self, that inflation comes. People become so inflated, so full of shit. These newly awakened gurus are incredibly dangerous. And that's where temperance comes in, no? Yeah, I use in temperance that scene where Buddha touches the ground when he's enlightened. Mm-hmm. When Mara tells him, by what authority, and he just touches the ground. That's temperance. You got to ground yourself again before you get to the Devil. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of the Hangman, I mean, that's a really good interpretation of somebody who's like woken up. But and through that awakening process, indulges more in ego. When I think of the Hangman, I also feel like the Hangman invokes a lot of intense suffering. I mean, there is suffering with the Hangman because you realize you can't do anything,
Yeah.
There's nothing you can